Legacy Precious Metals is the company that I trust to give you good and patient counsel for investing in your retirement. The Biden administration has caused a financial crisis, and they have no clue how to fix it. Oil prices have skyrocketed, and when oil prices go up, not only do your expenses go up, but the cost of transportation and shipping spikes, leading the prices of goods to rise. And we are already seeing record inflation. That's the last thing that we need. Our economy is in trouble, and you need to take steps to protect yourself. If all your money is tied up in stocks, bonds, and traditional markets, you may be vulnerable. So gold is one of the very best ways to protect your retirement. No matter what happens, you own your own gold. It's real, it's physical, and it's always been valuable since the dawn of time. Call Legacy Precious Metals today at 866-528-1903 or visit them online at legacypminvestments.com. That's legacypminvestments.com, where you can download the free investor's guide. You can also go to my Facebook page, Jenna Ellis. I am a public figure on Facebook, and I just posted yesterday a really great interview with the president of Legacy Precious Metals, who is discussing why you need to start your retirement account even if you're in your 20s or 30s. There is always a great time to protect your retirement and invest, just like you want to protect your health over the long term. So go to Legacy Precious Metals at legacypminvestments.com or call 866-528-1903.
As a constitutional law attorney, former senior legal advisor, and personal counsel to President Donald J. Trump, Jenna Ellis believes in the rule of law and the importance of integrity in our elections. And she's ready to tackle the big cultural and legal issues facing America. This is the Jenna Ellis Show. Here is your host, Jenna Ellis.
Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of the Jenna Ellis Show. I'm Jenna Ellis, and as you have probably been observing, if you are at all on Twitter or even paying attention whatsoever to social media, Elon Musk is changing the narrative completely by bringing back former accounts that have been banned for really no reason at all. And this is having a huge impact not only on the mainstream media's ability to control the narrative, but also independent journalism. Importantly, our good friends at Project Veritas. So joining me now is Jared Eid, who is the senior counsel for Project Veritas. And Jared, this was really amazing that really quickly Elon Musk has brought back not only the satire news site like our friends the Babylon Bee, but actual real investigative journalists like Project Veritas. So how has this changed the game for you guys?
You know, it's been almost a year and a half since Project Veritas has been on Twitter, and to have that course reversed in such a quick fashion has really been quite amazing from our standpoint. And you look at it, we were reversed and put back onto Twitter on Sunday. That same day, we published a teaser about our upcoming video that we're going to be releasing next week. And it's already had 1 million views. So I think it shows that Twitter is hungry for real journalism, unfiltered truth. And the reality is we were not getting that before.
Yeah, and I think it's so important that everyone can participate in the conversation, and there aren't these backroom Twitter employees that are, of course, a lot of leftists, and who knows what their allegiances are, and obviously their donations and political perspectives. But it seems like Elon Musk is genuinely wanting just public debate and conversation, not people who are just arbiters of truth and so-called misinformation, but so that the American people and also, people all across the globe can hear all the information and simply decide for themselves. So how do you think overall this is going to change the game in terms of newsworthy content and actually getting out facts and truth?
Yeah, I think it does change the game quite substantially. I mean, we've seen, for example, whether it be on Project Veritas stories that have been kind of hidden from the public, or even more high-profile stories by places like the New York Post that have been, censored by Twitter, but are now being covered by CBS. When you have the unfiltered truth and people actually know what it is, I tend to believe that the American public is smart enough to know what to do with the facts that are given to them and respond appropriately. The fact that we had with Twitter and frankly with other platforms as well, people in charge of this who didn't trust the American public is really damaging to our society. There's if you go on my Twitter right now, for example, one of the main quotes is by a guy named Alexander Mickeljohn, who basically says that an informed public is the keystone to a functioning democracy. What we saw with Twitter and what we're seeing with other platforms as well, including, for example, one that we're engaged in a lawsuit with, whether that be with the New York Times or the Election Integrity Partnership, is really this kind of unholy alliance between the powers that be and trying to suppress ultimately news that they don't agree with. And we saw that in terms of censorship on Twitter, where government actors were taking steps to try to get Twitter to censor various platforms, ourselves included, or whether you saw that ultimately with other platforms such as Facebook, Instagram. Instagram, for example, we were unable to even be tagged in posts for close to a year because we had the audacity to allow whistleblowers to speak about what they were seeing inside, for example, an HHS hospital. So it's refreshing to see ultimately some of this truth be allowed to come out and people be allowed to speak their minds. Jenna, we used to be able to do this in the public square. People don't do that anymore. The public square is now online. And I think one of the things that people don't really realize when it comes to Twitter and Facebook and these places is that this is the new public square, and Congress has effectively sold the public square to private actors via Section 230 and the immunity that comes with that effectively says these groups can do whatever it is they would like to do in terms of censorship without consequence. And ultimately, that's what the courts have held as well. What that has really allowed is it has allowed the government to do what it otherwise was not legally able to do. This as a constitutional law scholar, the government can't just censor speech. So now they do it via private actors like Twitter. I think that's why you're probably seeing some of the great blowback of Elon's actions by allowing people to actually be and participate in the public square kind of in an unfiltered way. That's not quite what they want.
Right. And it was interesting to me earlier this week, there was a trend calling out Elon Musk and calling him Space Karen, and all of the memes, of obviously like the Karen and with the I want to go talk to the manager. And I'm thinking, well, wait, he actually is the manager. So what is he doing? Complaining to himself? I mean, the left can't meme. The left can't even make fun of it. They're just screaming at this guy at this point. But it's hilarious, as Elon himself has actually said, they're complaining about Twitter on Twitter. And so they're actually using the platform as the exact tool to air their thoughts, which is exactly what he wants. And I love the fact that he's not backing down and he's saying, I want more discussion, more debate. And this is very healthy for society. And what does it tell you, Jared, that it's only the leftists who have used Section 230, have used these private platforms, as President Trump acknowledged in one of his lawsuits against big tech, and said, really, they're basically government agents and government actors in this collusion situation where they're taking the bidding of government and then they are facilitating that in terms of censorship on their platforms. And so now it's only the left and those who have benefited from the censorship of their political opposition and their opponents and investigative journalists like you guys at Project Veritas. And conservatives are going, yay, like we don't care that all of these crazy leftists can still say whatever they want. We're going, yeah, your opinions are really bad and we will fight you on the merits because we know we have the best arguments. But the left, I think, knows they can't win on the merits, just like in the abortion context. They have for decades since 1973 said, well, abortion's a settled issue, so we don't even want to talk about it. Now that they're being forced to actually defend their position and say, well, why should we kill babies in the womb? Why should we allow partial birth abortion or abortion even weeks after birth? They can't defend it. They simply wanted to silence their opposition. So how do you think this changes the debate? And what does it tell you that it's only the left that's screaming at the sky and conservatives are like, bring it on?
Yeah, I think it's a dangerous precedent when you engage in censorship of any form like that. And, whether, you're talking about an attorney general who raids Project Veritas because we dared go after a particular story that other agencies might deem as untouchable, or whether it's the FBI going to Facebook and telling them, hey, there's Russian disinformation that's out there that turns out now CBS is reporting on. So, make sure that you suppress that truth. This kind of censorship it's a form that should be universally deplored. I don't think this is a right or left issue when it comes to the ability to say truth matters and it belongs in the public sphere. It shouldn't be anyway. It should be universally true that all Americans say, I may not like your idea, but I agree with your ability to speak it. And what is the saying that the solution to bad speech is more good speech? And really, it's a battle of ideas. Let the best ideas win. Don't suppress them. If it's fake news, and that's the latest thing, is the idea behind disinformation and misinformation. Gosh, my kids were watching a Santa Claus movie the other day. This brand new movie out on, I believe it was on Apple TV. And one of the guys was on the naughty list because he was, quote unquote, spreading disinformation. I mean, the fact that these kind of things are even making it into our kids' movies is absolutely ridiculous. What is disinformation? Who gets to be the arbiter of truth? The fact that we don't trust the American public to just simply receive information, filter out what's good and bad, and make informed decisions is incredibly telling. Journalism is not about simply repeating what the government or the important parties want you to know. Journalism is about holding those people accountable. And sometimes that means you're publishing information that they would rather see kept secret. For far too long, the big tech people who have been in charge of these, the admins, the control people like Twitter's executives, for example, they've just simply played the part way too well of trying to encourage censorship as opposed to encouraging free speech and encouraging ultimately the exchange of ideas.
Yeah, and you've made a really important point, Jared, that we don't as a society anymore, or at least the elitists, right? Those who want to control the narrative, don't trust people to simply look at the facts for themselves and actually determine and distinguish truth versus non-truth or fact versus fiction. And it's fascinating to me with the rise of the tech infrastructure and the ability to, just on my phone, I can get an answer to basically any question in 0.0002 seconds that it takes for me to Google something, right? But who is the arbiter of who's giving the answer? And I think what's so fascinating, when I was a professor at Colorado Christian University, I actually had this conversation with my students when they, being very, very smart, students and wanting to engage in the actual analysis, they were saying that a lot of them were frustrated with their fellow friends, who were at other universities or maybe liberal and stuff, who were Googling things and assuming that the engagement response and the top, 5 different returns on their searches were the facts and were the truth, instead of looking at the source information and saying, okay, I'm asking this question, Google is responding in a certain way, or whatever your browser is. But I need to look at the source of that information and then actually do the analysis myself and determine, do I believe that source? Are they verifiable? Are they trusted? Are they worthy of my attention? But it almost seems like that analysis piece is missing for a lot of the younger generation, the younger millennials and the Gen Zers, because they've been conditioned that way with social media and with tech. And I think it's purposeful. And we need to get back to a society that's willing to question those in authority. They're willing to question the sources, and they're willing to look at a wide swath of independent journalists who aren't getting funding from the government or from, private donors that may have a bias or may inform their perspective. So how do we encourage especially young people to have that critical thinking aspect of it that I think has been intentionally suppressed by the elitists who want to just feed the narrative instead of provoke people on how to think? They just want to tell you what to think.
Well, I may be a little bit biased, but I can tell you one good way of doing that is by showing people the source itself. That's one of the things that Project Veritas does incredibly well. We don't tell you to rely on anonymous sources. We don't tell you to rely on Wikipedia like New York Times' attorneys did in trying to defeat our motion to dismiss, or trying to defeat our case with a motion to dismiss. We show you the words coming out of the mouth of the people who we are reporting on. It's their words, not ours, that you have to rely on. And so, that's, I think, the great irony that exists when people attack Project Veritas or try to censor it online is they're not really truly censoring us. They're censoring themselves. And that's kind of the crazy part about this, is they just don't want the truth to be out there. They don't want their words out there. They're embarrassed of it. The thing they fear the most, as James O'Keefe frequently says, is exposure. And I think if you start showing these things and start showing the truth and start being open to looking into the words that are actually coming out of their mouth, you are going to challenge some of these narratives that exist and potentially get people to kind of think beyond Wikipedia.
Yeah.
That's
The
my
great
view.
source. I mean, I remember in college, I wasn't allowed to cite to Wikipedia because it
Right.
wasn't a valid source. It was just a collective groupthink. And my professors, even at a liberal, I mean, Colorado State is not by any means a conservative institution. And even those professors were like, you can't cite to Wikipedia. You can maybe go there to try to get the primary source. But if you cite to Wikipedia, you're going to fail this research paper. I mean,
Exactly.
we've come so far. And that was only, a little over a decade ago, but still.
Yeah, and Wikipedia is such a great example because, if you look at, for example, on Wikipedia, our own page, I mean, it is a pinnacle example of disinformation itself. And
Mine
what's
too.
particularly right, it's interesting. And what's really interesting about it is when you go in there and you try to, encourage people to make changes. After we won on the motion to dismiss with the New York Times, just as a quick recap, had defamed us, calling one of our videos deceptive. We filed a complaint. The New York Times moved to dismiss, and ultimately the New York Supreme Court, Justice Charles Wood, said no, it was the New York Times who engaged in disinformation and deception in the way that they wrote that article. We tried to get that order from the New York Supreme Court on our Wikipedia page, and the Wikipedia editors responded by saying, I'm sorry, that is not a reliable source.
Whoa.
Let that sink in, as Elon Musk says.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. And yet we're supposed to trust Wikipedia to be a reliable source itself for what it purports, right? Its reporting, its sourcing, its statements are used on Google information sheets. When you Google a company and it pulls up what's the purpose of the organization, that information is largely in part pulled from Wikipedia. So we have all of these interwoven situations where Wikipedia is being used in that manner, and yet they don't consider court orders reliable sources. We could win that lawsuit 100%, and Wikipedia would still say, nah.
Wow. I mean, and that is just so crazy that a judicial opinion and a court order is somehow not a reliable source you can disagree with the court's order and information, but we at least have to agree on the fact that this is what the court said. And this is the interesting thing in the dynamic as well, distinguishing between fact versus opinion. At least we all used to be able to say, okay, we agree that the sky is blue. Now, maybe I don't like that, or maybe, I want to debate that, or the policy, around what we do with that. But we at least should acknowledge the self-evident facts, and then we can have the opinions on it, and we can have even, the bias and the perspective and the self-interest and the, all of that stuff, and the vested interests of the special interest groups in Washington. But we at least used to be able to distinguish fact versus opinion, and to say that somehow a court order doesn't even fall into the reliable source category. I mean, that sounds as bad as something that, Brian Stelter used to say on CNN. I mean, that's just insane. But speaking, Jared, about your lawsuit, how does the reinstatement by Elon Musk change your strategy potentially moving forward on that lawsuit, or what's the status of that you can disclose?
Yeah, so we had sued the New York Times, obviously, for their defamation. That case remains pending in the New York Appellate Division. We have high hopes for that. For example, one of the arguments that the New York Times made was that the anti-SLAPP statute in New York was retroactive, i.e., we had filed our lawsuit before there was even such a law. The law was subsequently passed. They tried to retroactively apply it. A New York Appellate Division quick case has subsequently come out saying, no, it is not retroactive. So we're very hopeful on that case. We also sued, the Twitter ban actually coincidentally led to a variety of lawsuits. We were banned on February 11th for supposedly failing or sharing private information. What that quote unquote private information was is we forgot to blur a house number that appeared on a lamppost. You couldn't see the guy's what state he lived in, what city he lived in, what street he lived on, but just the numbers. And I don't even remember what it was. Let's just hypothetically say 311. Suddenly we're too private of information. Meanwhile, CNN remains on Twitter to this day, and yet still, posted number one, the house information, including, by the way, county and state of a private individual, as well as ultimately Brett Kavanaugh's own, home. So I think there was a double standard that existed there. That ban, however, led ultimately to the ban then of Project Veritas Action, which remains currently not on Twitter. We're working on that, as well as ultimately James O'Keefe. James was accused of, quote unquote, operating fake accounts, which was complete and utter falsehood. We ended up filing a lawsuit against Twitter in New York on that basis for it being ultimately defamatory as to a journalist to accuse them of operating fake accounts and attempting to, quote unquote, mislead the public in that manner. Ultimately, the New York court said, no, you would have to sue in the state of California, where Twitter's headquarters were, because even though Twitter has a major office in New York City, the court said that was not a sufficient tie to New York. Of course, with the reinstatement of Project Veritas to Twitter, that's not likely a lawsuit that we're going to pursue any longer. Ultimately, us allowing to be back on there. This was one of the biggest problems that existed with this, is Twitter being allowed to say these completely defamatory things, and we being, completely deprived of any voice on Twitter to fight back and actually explain what the truth was. We've got that voice back now. The people have that voice back now. Again, 1 million views. Our most recent, expose, if you will, just the tease of that expose and the fact that we're back on Twitter has already been covered by CBS News. It was mentioned on 1010 Wins in New York. It's been covered by local TV throughout the country. 1 million views. The people are hungry for unfiltered truth. We're happy to give it to them.
That's amazing. And so do you have any estimation, or has Twitter or Elon given you any indication that Project Veritas Action or James O'Keefe will be reinstated, or what's your hope there?
We don't have anything we can share on that yet, but suffice it to say we are working on that.
Okay. Well, I can't wait. That's going to be amazing. And so how did you actually come to find out about Project Veritas being reinstated? Was that a notification from Twitter that, hey, you've been reinstated, or just people who look at these accounts and are kind of waiting for this? How did you actually get notified?
So I'm saying this with all love. I have a neurotic director of litigation for me, who it's one of his best qualities, and he was frequently checking our Twitter account and was able to find out that it was unlocked by just when we were suspended, you couldn't even view our tweets, let alone actually do anything with the account. He logged in and was checking it, just happened to be doing that on Sunday, and saw that our account was no longer, invisible, and you could actually see our tweets. And he went, I wonder if this means what I think it means. We logged in, and sure enough, that's exactly what it meant. It's kind of an interesting phenomenon, we're seeing when you're unbanned, you don't immediately gain all your followers. So it kind of was a panic moment when we saw that, great, we're back on Twitter, but we have no followers. And
wow.
They slowly, came back to life. But, again, that allowed us then to post this tease of our upcoming story that's going to be released on November 29th. We have a brave whistleblower from within HHS who's going to be talking about some of the government's failures, which have allowed ultimately cartels and various other bad actors to engage in human trafficking of the worst nature for some of the unaccompanied minors that are crossing the border at this point.
I think that's really fascinating that you don't get notified in the same way. In the one time that I was suspended for a week on Twitter, there was a notification, and here's the tweet, the supposedly offensive tweet, with nothing other than some vague reference, of course, to the TOS, and nothing at all concrete, because they don't want you to be able to challenge it. But then, as you're saying, when your account is reactivated, there's no notification, and that may be an Elon decision. Who knows? But so did you actually have to start from scratch with your followers and then go and refollow other accounts? Because I did notice Project Veritas does follow me, so I appreciate that still. So if somebody refollowed me, thank you. And of course, I follow you guys as well. But how did that slowly aggregate, or did you have to start from scratch?
No, it slowly, it was, my wife is a huge fan, of course, of Project Veritas, and it was very interesting. She was taking little snapshots of it every few seconds or so, and it was interesting to watch. It just automatically started adding our followers back in, and the people that we were following. So, you'd see it jump 10, 15,000 followers, every few seconds. It was,
wow.
Pretty crazy.
Yeah, this is incredible, and I think will be a moment in history that we're actually going backward toward correcting a really bad trajectory. And to say that, the conservative voices and the people who are truly independent as well. So basically, anyone who doesn't just fall in line with the Democratic leftist elitist, however you want to frame that narrative, all of the people who want to be in charge of and to be the arbiters of truth. Seeing this rollback, I think, is a pivotal moment in world history, frankly, with the rise of, as you've described it so aptly, the public square that truly is now online, and with people being able to information gather from sources that they want to hear from and have these debates and discussions and this clash in a way without fear of censorship or having to tailor their message or their tweets in fear that they're going to be suspended, and ultimately have that moment in their head that I've definitely had quite a few times of, is this really worth it to tweet because I may end up getting suspended for it? We shouldn't have to have that type of calculation in order to simply put out an opinion, or especially put out facts like Project Veritas does, in terms of just simply reporting and giving all of this content to the public square to be able to have a conversation about it. So I think this is going to be a moment in history that really will, looking back on this in years to come, and even maybe months and weeks to come, looking back on this moment as something that really has changed the trajectory of the importance not only of journalism, the public square, First Amendment jurisprudence, but also how we engage as a society in analyzing and understanding the difference between fact and opinion, information versus misinformation, who we trust. Where do you think it goes from here?
Ultimately, I think this is about the democratization of information, and ultimately journalism as well. I think one of the things that one of my favorite quotes is, "Courage is contagious." We show these whistleblowers that are stepping forward to tell their story, and they beget more whistleblowers who are brave and are willing to tell their story. And I think that's so incredibly important. It shows people what they can do with a little bit of information and a little bit of bravery. Our motto is be brave, do something. The more this kind of information can get out there, the more we can hold people accountable. I mean, just look at what we've been able to do in the past year and a half while we've been suspended from Twitter. Our secret curriculum series, for example, where we were exposing teachers, which is, by the way, not over. We were able to expose a teacher in Greenwich, Connecticut, who bragged about not hiring conservatives or Catholics. The Connecticut Attorney General, who is by no means a fan of ours, launched an investigation into that. The Connecticut governor, also not a fan of ours, expressly denounced the conduct that we exposed. We exposed a teacher in New York who was making similar style comments about how horrible, white kids in her class were. She no longer has a job and is no longer working there. And most recently, we exposed a teacher who was talking in a very unprofessional and sexual manner about his female class, students, underage students. He no longer has a job either. I think these kind of stories are incredibly important, and it's very, very telling that Twitter was not allowing these stories to be told on Twitter until Elon Musk had to spend $44 billion to restore free speech on Twitter.
Well, free speech is absolutely worth $44 billion, and we're seeing that. And I think we'll see that again in the years to come, just how important that is. Just like President Trump with all of the federal judge appointments and the Supreme Court appointments, we will see the fruit of that in the decades to come. And thank you so much for what you're doing at Project Veritas. And as you said, these are just shining the light back into what the left is saying. And so they don't even want their own words that they've said in silence in their manipulation. I mean, it's like libs of TikTok, where all she's doing is posting what they're openly saying on social media and is censored for it. I mean, that makes absolutely no sense unless you understand what it is that the evil elitists are trying to do. And so Project Veritas has always been at the very forefront of making sure that we have accurate, well-sourced information, and you guys have shined a light on in the darkness to expose all of these really incredibly important stories. So I'm so glad that you're back on Twitter. So thank you so much, Jared Eid, for joining me today. And people need to follow you, also get involved if they want to stand up and do something. So how can people not only follow you now on Twitter, but also support Project Veritas?
So you can follow us on Twitter at project_Veritas. But otherwise, I encourage people, reach out, look at projectveritas.com. If you know something or know someone who knows something and would like to be a whistleblower, reach out to us at veritastips@protonmail.com. Give us a phone call. We're always around. Of course, my Twitter's at jtayloreid. You can DM me if you can't remember any of those other things. But reach out to us. We're here to tell people's truths and tell the stories that other news organizations may choose to ignore. There's a reason people come to Project Veritas, and that's because they can't go anywhere else. You want unfiltered truth to be seen. This is where you get it.
Awesome. Well, you're doing a fantastic job. And thanks so much for joining me today. And look forward to all of the great work that you will be doing and now are allowed to share once again on Twitter. So congrats on the unban and the reinstatement. And thank you, Elon Musk. This is great. Thanks, Jared.
Thank you very much, Jenna. And yes, thank you, Elon Musk.
Legacy Precious Metals is the company that I trust to give you good and patient counsel for investing in your retirement. The Biden administration has caused a financial crisis, and they have no clue how to fix it. Oil prices have skyrocketed, and when oil prices go up, not only do your expenses go up, but the cost of transportation and shipping spikes, leading the prices of goods to rise. And we are already seeing record inflation. That's the last thing that we need. Our economy is in trouble, and you need to take steps to protect yourself. If all your money is tied up in stocks, bonds, and traditional markets, you may be vulnerable. So gold is one of the very best ways to protect your retirement. No matter what happens, you own your own gold. It's real, it's physical, and it's always been valuable since the dawn of time. Call Legacy Precious Metals today at 866-528-1903 or visit them online at legacypminvestments.com. That's legacypminvestments.com, where you can download the free investor's guide. You can also go to my Facebook page, Jenna Ellis. I am a public figure on Facebook, and I just posted yesterday a really great interview with the president of Legacy Precious Metals, who is discussing why you need to start your retirement account even if you're in your 20s or 30s. There is always a great time to protect your retirement and invest, just like you want to protect your health over the long term. So go to Legacy Precious Metals at legacypminvestments.com or call 866-528-1903. MyPillow is having their biggest sheet sale of the year. You all have helped build MyPillow into the amazing company that it is today. Now Mike Lindell, the inventor and CEO, wants to give back exclusively to you, his listeners. The Percale bed sheet set is available in a variety of colors and sizes, and they are all on sale. So for example, the queen size is regularly priced at $89.98, but is now only $39.98 with our listener promo code Jenna, Jenna. So order now, because when they're gone, they're gone. The Percale bed sheets are breathable and have a cool and crisp feel. These come with a 10-year warranty and a 60-day money-back guarantee, so don't miss out on this incredible offer. There's a limited supply, so be sure to order now. You can call 1-800-564-8475 and use the promo code Jenna, or go to mypillow.com/Jenna. You can click on the radio listeners square and use the promo code Jenna. That's Jenna. Thank you so much to all of Mike Lindell's listeners and listeners of this podcast for making sure to support MyPillow and using our exclusive listener promo code Jenna. That's Jenna.